Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you might be around the world. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer with Tolga Kombak. Tolga is going to join us today and hopefully answer many of your questions that you have around Scrum. My name's Eric Neiberg and I run marketing and operations here at Scrum.org, and I'll be your host today. Next slide. So just a little bit about this series. It's your opportunity to ask your questions. We try to run these at least once a month, and we've got great attendants that continue to show up to ask the questions that are pressing you. We've got about 275 professional Scrum trainers now all around the world, and they're all here to help you, and Tolga's taking his time today. So please ask your questions. If we don't get to your questions, we'll try to respond to them all via email following the event as well. Next slide. So just briefly, who is Scrum.org? Scrum.org is a training and certification body for Scrum. We're founded by and chaired by Ken Schwaber, the co-creator of Scrum. Ken continues to evolve Scrum, working on new versions of the Scrum Guide, working on things like how do we expand Scrum for multiple teams working together using the Nexus framework and other things. We provide training. You can see the different training classes and certifications around those training classes globally. We also continue to provide lots and lots of free resources to help you evolve your learning and understanding and working within Scrum, like this free webinar today. Next slide. So with that, rather than me introducing Tolga, I'll let Tolga introduce himself, and then we'll get to the questions. Tolga?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. My name is Tolga Kombak. I'm managing partner at ACM Agile, and located headquartered in Istanbul, Turkey. But we have lots of clients and some offices in Greece, and lots of clients around the Middle East, and also some cities in Europe as well. And I'm a professional Scrum trainer at Scrum.org, and I'm also an accredited trainer at IC Agile. And my story with Scrum roots back to 2009. Actually, one of the pilot teams in a huge bank has brought me to a career change, actually, because that was an enlightening moment for me. That project, Scrum project, which was a pilot one, was a very, very good, huge success, and there was lots of customer satisfaction and time to market and team morale and all of the things that Scrum actually provides us if we do it well. So after that, I started an internal training content. I started coach teams, and in 5 years' time, I want to go professional on this and joined ACM. And since then, 2014, for 5 years, I've been in ACM as a trainer and an Agile coach and agility consultant to management as well. So I had lots of experience in huge transformations. One of the white papers that we have actually with the Agile coach in this bank, huge bank, is being published from Scrum.org as well. Reached to 180 Scrum teams in all IT, like 1,000 people. And still, I'm coaching teams. I'm consulting to management in lots of banks and telco companies, small, medium, large. So I love what I'm doing, and I want to contribute as much as possible to the community. This is a very quality of professional Scrum trainers, and this is a great opportunity for me to answer any questions with my experience as much as I can. Hopefully, that it will be useful for everyone that has attended.
Great, thanks, Tolga. So we can just jump to the next slide. So throughout the webinar, please ask your questions as thoughts come up, as ideas come up. You can see there in the questions window, just type your questions away, and we will take them as they come, take them as we're able. So with that, we'll head to the next, or actually, I guess we can stay on this slide to remind you, and let's start taking some questions. So we've got some starting to come in already. First question, should the Scrum Master be full-time, or can they be part of a development team as well?
Depends. Scrum Master module. There's nothing like mandatory that Scrum Master should be full-time, but it is always a good idea that a Scrum Master has spends time with the team and knows the team members' interactions. So actually, there are lots of practices in my experience that development team members are also Scrum Masters. But we need to understand that Scrum Masters will need some time and will have to spare some time for that. Scrum Master is not just a part-time job that you can do just when you're a tester or developer or analyst, whatever your role is in a cross-functional team. And you just also have this hat on your head as a Scrum Master. It's not something like that. So I would suggest a full-time Scrum Master, but who is also having time with the development team, and also has opportunity to coach the product owner, to coach the team members as well, and also talk to the management in the adoption of Scrum. So my answer for that is it should not be it's not mandatory to be
Oh, Tolga?
highly suggested that spending time with the development team as well.
Hey, Tolga, can you stop your video? We're Tolga, can you hear me? Can you turn your video off? We've lost, it seems like there's a Tolga? Sorry, folks. Looks like there's some technical difficulties. Maybe turn your video off. It seems like you're having a bandwidth issue.
Actually, I'm gonna hide. Let me try. So that.
Let's see if that helps. Can you repeat the last?
Let's see.
Yeah, can you repeat the last part of your answer? We lost that part. Thank you.
So as a sum up, I don't know where the connection was broken, but as a sum up, it's not mandatory, of course, but I strongly suggest that you have full-time Scrum Masters that are spending time with the development team as well. So instead of choosing one of the development team members as a Scrum Master to be in the team all the time, instead of doing that, have a Scrum Master who is full-time supporting the team and also spending time with the development team to observe the relationships and coach and facilitate things and coach the people.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Yep. So do you have any thoughts or opinions on the difference between a Scrum Master versus an Agile coach?
I would say Scrum Master is the only role that is required, actually. But as an Agile coach myself, I always say that I'm not here forever, but I try to help the Scrum Masters have the Agile coach stances, like coaching and facilitating and teaching Scrum to newcomers, or helping people to understand the values of Scrum, enact the values of Scrum. And that's just actually it's a very similar role, but for the Scrum Masters, for advanced Scrum Masters, having advanced Scrum Masters in the team, you don't need any other role like Agile coach. Actually, Scrum Masters become like Agile coaches. So Scrum Master is the only role that we need in Scrum, right? So Agile coaches is like a starting point as a professionally supporting them, but not only the Scrum Masters, but also the team. But we need to grow actually Scrum Masters. That's why I have some kind of long-term programs as well, like empowerment programs, Scrum Master empowerment programs that I run on like 1-year basis. So that helps in the huge organization transformations for Scrum Masters, having the Agile coach stances like coaching, facilitating, mentoring, and teaching, which are really useful.
So kind of tying into the role of the Scrum Master and continuing on that thought, do you believe that the Scrum Master needs to be technical? or can they be above the technology?
I have cases that having knowledge in the technology and in-depth knowledge about the domain as well, whatever the product is, helps a lot to Scrum Masters. But of course, it's not that only. The Scrum Master's responsibility is to remove all the impediments that the team has, and of course, to help the team become efficient. And it's very important that everybody understands, not only in the team but also in the organization, understands Scrum, understands the values of Scrum, and the adoption is in good shape and expands in the organization. So I see the Scrum Masters as change agents rather than technical people that help just the team. So yes, there are some cases in my experience that having a technical knowledge is good to understand the team's vocabulary and other things. But of course, it's not mandatory, or it doesn't have to be, but it helps. Not only the technical thing, but also maybe the business part, the product part as well.
Great. So kind of tying into this is a great theme that continues to build here in the questions, and I'm going to keep with this theme a little bit. So you've talked a little bit about the role of the Scrum Master. We've talked a little bit about how they can evolve. Building on that, we've got a great question. What's one of the most important things, or a few important things that someone can do to drive adoption of Scrum in an organization that's new to Agile and Scrum?
Yeah. One of the toughest things, of course, it depends on the scale of the organization as well. In like, you have like 10 teams, 12 teams, 20 teams, which is not a huge organization, but a moderate, not small organization. Or if you have just 1, 2, 3 Scrum teams in an organization, that's enough, like a startup or something. It's much more easier. But I think the question is about the huge organizations, like more than 50 Scrum teams and a huge IT. The important part is to create change. So Scrum comes into your organization and shows all the things. Actually, that's Ken's quote, right? It's like the mother-in-law that's come to your house. So, and yeah, there are lots of problems in the agility of the organization, and Scrum creates radical transparency on that. And you need to tackle all those problems. If you can do that, if you go on paddling your bicycle, you will be riding. But if you're not do the pedaling, you will fall. So it's important that even if you have some organizational impediments, organizational problems, it's very important to go on with the transformation process. Actually, that's why we have kind of an agile leadership teams in the heart of this agile transformation governance, which is very important. Some change leaders, and these change leaders are starting the agile transformations in our model with some very core team that are empowered, and then they create more buy-in to the organization, to all the management and all departments, and this team of agile change agents become more and more in number, and they become actually internal agile coaches after some time. And meanwhile we try to support the Scrum teams. So the most important thing is, I think, to answer that question, to be very stubborn, and maybe not stubborn is the right word, but to be very consistent on moving on, doing the same things, just rooting back to the agile values, the Scrum values, and having your process changes in your organization, not just in the team level, portfolio level, recruitment, HR, finance, not just IT, but to spread the word and spread the values inside your organization. That's how you become an agile organization, and you change people, because change is very, very hard. And organizational change is even harder and a very long journey. It takes sometimes ages, and culture change, the organizational culture, change in years sometimes. But it is not impossible, but it is very hard. So you need to go on pedaling your bicycle, I say.
Great. So what are some of the things that you can do to help the organization start to evolve? So if, say, they're doing Waterfall today, and maybe even for those who aren't familiar with Waterfall, Waterfall is traditional project management, where we define everything up front, and then 18 months later, we deliver what we think we wanted, and everything has probably changed along the way. But we're Scrum, we're learning and constantly adapting and constantly inspecting what we're doing. But just some folks might be new to that, so I wanted to put that out there. But the question here is more along the lines of how do we help an organization evolve from Waterfall to Scrum, or in many cases from doing, as Dave West, our CEO, coined back when he was an analyst at Forrester Research, Water Scrum Fall, to really doing Scrum.
Yeah. In my cases, actually, we always started with piloting some projects, like not very small and trivial projects, but not very highly critical projects, but in the middle. So I suggest starting with some pilot projects, like 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on your scale. If you have lots of domains, some experiment in only in the domain, and some cross-domain pilot teams. I suggest doing that, but after some time, the organization sees that you cannot live with a hybrid model with the waterfall planning and the waterfall mindset there with some projects, and some projects are in Agile, and they're doing Scrum and they're delivering value, but they're dependent on all these waterfall approach and all the resources and all the people that are dependent to these, all the teams that are dependent to those guys. That reduces your agility, and that's how you face this problem and go in scale also to Agile for all your projects. That was the most important, most effective thing, that how organizations see the problems in the hybrid model. And that was the initiative that, okay, this is not happening, this is not going good. So instead of going back to Waterfall, of course, going forward with Scrum, with Agile, and having also requiring some dependency management, some portfolio management in huge scales is very important for implementing incremental the value delivery, because still you will have lots of dependencies, and instead of the waterfall approach that are plans upfront everything, just deliver increments of small things, but from end to end in your organization, and adapt your processes accordingly. That's I would say, just do it instead of trying a hybrid model or two-speed IT or the Y model, those kind of wordings. Yeah, there are lots of organizations, I see that, but I suggest be brave enough to go all the way in Agile. How big ever you are, even if you're thousands of people.
Great. So there are a bunch of questions kind of related around forecasting and measurement. Well, I'll read one of them here. How can I avoid teams converting story points into time? But there are a lot of other questions around, what do you suggest for user story estimation? What are some of the ways that you estimate work, and suggestions around that?
It is a very common practice that, yes, the story points for your user stories or product backlog estimation. And that's kind of a habit, actually. The man days or the man hours, or it's like something buried in our spine or in our veins, like everything is man days, and the traditional project management is Excel cells in your master plans, like 3 man days plus 5 man days equals 8 man days. So which man and which day, I always ask. So instead of having the duration, just the perimeter about how on how you in how much time you're going to do that, focusing on the work itself, because the man differs and the days differ. So it's to have the inception in the organization, especially if we have a PMO, project management office, and to change them into an agile mindset, we need to focus on the work so that we can have our enterprise capacity in like story points, and of course to understand or to embrace that software is complex, and since the software is complex, you cannot estimate perfectly. You can never do it. So just mandates and summing with I've seen some mandates like 1,352 mandates. That's the estimation. That's the cost estimation for a project. I mean, isn't it so funny? 1,252 mandates, very specific to that. So it's actually not so realistic. So instead of that, embracing the complexity, the uncertainty of the work that we're doing, the software, the product development, and all the technological things and all the requirements. So we can estimate in some ranges. That can be t-shirt sizes, like X small, medium large, X large, XX large. That can be story points in Fibonacci series, which is very common. You can go on still even mandates if your organization is very they have a addiction to that. You can even go on with mandates or person days, but still you need to embrace in your organization that it is not a very precise and certain thing. It's uncertain. It's estimation, right? You are trying to forecast it, but it's not certain. So if the organization embraces this and changing instead of from mandates to story points or some relative estimation, that would do great work for also the release projection of all the organizational capacity.
Great. So that's perfect. I think that certainly will be very helpful. Thank you. Just kind of there's a bunch of other questions coming in around. So we talked a little bit about going water Scrum fall. There's also a lot of people who are using Scrum with Kanban or Scrum and Kanban. Do you have some thoughts on Scrum versus Kanban, Scrum with Kanban, and how those might work together?
Yeah, I get a lot of questions when I deliver Scrum trainings, but because Mr. Teacher, Mr. Trainer, we heard that there's something called a Kanban. Should we go to a Kanban training as well, or is Scrum a good fit for us? Our work is not like it's always. There are lots of things changing. The perception I think in the sector, if you have some cadences of if you can commit to at least 1 week and 2 weeks or something, at most 4 weeks, you can do Scrum. But if your things are changing rapidly, you cannot do Scrum. I think this is not a good perception. You can still do Scrum, and Scrum is a framework. You can enrich it with lots of things. It's not just Kanban practice. You can also put on top of it some DevOps practices, some UX practices, which I find very useful as well. So there are lots of things that you can do. But when it comes to the question that are we going to do or shall we do Kanban or Scrum, and it is not something versus, I guess, but Kanban is kind of a flow management system, and you focus on your flow, the value flow. So instead of it's not the right word, not instead of having Scrum, but having Kanban, you could have still the cadences of sprints, all the rituals, whatever Scrum guide tells us. On top of that, you can put, for example, work in progress estimates, which is a good practice in Kanban. And it creates you focus, because you also increase your pull system's power. Actually, there's a pull system in Scrum, which is the sprint itself. The sprint's time box and forces you to pull items, and the team members always pull items into a sprint time box. So it's a pull system. It's not a push system, but Kanban forces you with specific work in progress limits on different flow stages. So you can increase your focus by the help of Kanban practices. Why not? So focusing on some practice like cumulative flow diagrams in Kanban, or the heat maps, the aging of the items, your work items, those kind of practices, when put on top of Scrum, it's a very great opportunity to both have the cadences, sprint frequencies, having the feedback loops that also Kanban tells you to have some feedback loops. But Scrum, we have the feedback loops, right? So instead of calling it replenishment, we have the sprint planning, but you can replenish anytime, right? So we can have the sprint reviews to, even if you deliver the value very instantly in your flow, you can still have the sprint review to get feedback from your stakeholders, and you can have the retrospectives with process improvement actions. So, and you still have daily scrums, where in Kanban also you need to check your progress, you need to manage your flow, where daily scrum is a great fit for that. So I would say Kanban or Scrum, I would say go with Scrum, but put some Kanban practice. But first do the professional, not perfect Scrum, but I mean, whatever the Scrum tells you, start by the book and put some practices, Kanban practice or DevOps practices. That's my opinion. It's not a versus thing, it's a complementary thing, I guess.
Great, thanks, Tolga. And I'll throw a link in here in the chat in a moment for everybody. There's a lot of information up on our website of how you use Scrum with Kanban. It doesn't have to be an either or. There's actually a question in here which we can address as part of this. There's a question that says, what's the difference between Scrum and Agile? Agile is a way of thinking and a way of working. Scrum is a framework, an Agile framework in helping organizations to be more agile, but it's one of many Agile frameworks or ways of working in Agile. Scrum being a framework, process evolves from that framework. So you build your processes on top. Scrum is very lightweight and easy to use. And then you build in and pull in the right practices, no different than you would pull in some XP practices or test-driven development practices and so on in. You can do the same with Kanban. So there's a great link to a whole bunch of resources to help y'all. So I'll post that in as we continue in the chat. Changing gears a little bit, as a Scrum Master, how do you coach your product owner to be more Agile thinking, Scrum thinking? In this case, I've got a product owner who is very command and control. How do I get the product owner to let go and think and trust the team?
Product owners are representatives of all the stakeholders, right? And they are closer to the business, so they're businessmen or the business people, so they are demanding. But to have the product owners not pushing or forcing the team, I think Scrum Masters have very high responsibility on coaching them. And whenever I'm asked, or in my trainings, there are some product owners that are coming to my class as well, and they are demanding people. How am I going to know that they are going to do the enough scope or enough items they're going to pull into the sprint? And my always answer to this is, what are you going to do with this information if they are doing it enough or they are not doing it? It's the only thing that you should start with, trusting them, right? But it's not easy. Building trust is not so easy, especially in hierarchical organizations, in huge organizations. If the product owners are also managers, for example, that's in lots of the transformations I have seen this. So instead of trying to command and control the people, just let them fail. If you call it a failure, but that will be on some small failures, and they will improve. Trust that they will improve. And the Scrum Masters coaching the teams, and also, of course, the product owners, they need to have some team building things, soft skill things, and building this as a facilitator, not just a go-between between the product owner and the development team, or reporting to product owner. So you need to build rapport, and you need to build, I think rapport is the right, trust is the right word, I think. So for that, letting the team, even if there are some failures, fail a little bit. Not in lots of cases, I see that small failures are also good for product owner, that, oh, okay, they are learning. Whenever I'm asked sometimes this question, when a sprint is a failure, I would say there cannot be any failure in a sprint in Scrum, because if you still do not deliver some value, but learn from that and improve yourself and deliver some value in the next upcoming sprints, then there is still some success that you have learned from that. But if this is a failure, the team is not learning, the team is not doing any improvement actions, and they don't even care about value delivery, and there is no value, and that's a failure, right? Because it's improvement is in the heart of Scrum, also the Kaizen week, also the changing for the better. If the team is not caring about delivering value to the customer, then yeah, that's a failure. But small failures, you should trust the team and let them fail a little bit.
Great, thanks, Tolga. Do you have any recommendations on where the Scrum Master should report within the organization? In this example, Jesse's organization, the development manager, product owner, Scrum Master are leading the team, and the Scrum Master reports to the development manager. So do you see any concerns with that? Do you have any recommendations around that?
In some cases of this, actually in some previous questions, actually, I guess I had mentioned, there are some cases that the development team members, one of the development team members are the Scrum Masters. In some of the organizations, because since he or she is also a development team member, can you get me? There's another connection problem again, I guess.
No, we hear you fine.
Oh, okay. In those cases, most of the time I see that development team member who is the Scrum Master is reporting to the development manager, or if he or she is an analyst in the team, then that department, if the departments are still different, which is not a good case. So my suggestion is, and as I said, for a full-time Scrum Master who is also can spend time with the team, and they have kind of a community of practice of the Scrum Masters of community practice. And in our Agile transformation model, we have the Agile Studio, inspired, I could say, from the Scrum Studio that we have in Scrum.org. Actually, the Agile Studio is a center of excellence of Agile coaches. But where the Agile coaches are coming from, yes, the Scrum Masters. So if there's an Agile Studio manager, yeah, why not? They can report to the Agile Studio manager, but their basic responsibility is to the team, and second responsibility is the Agile transformation. So Agile Studio kind of some community of practice and reporting to that, but not saying reporting actually, but working with those guys as a community is a better idea. Not reporting, report or reports to is not something, maybe it's about the Turkish thing, but it's not a good thing. Working together and collaborating with them, like a community of practice. I would suggest that. There's a lot of learning in gatherings of the Scrum Masters, for example, in organizations. As I mentioned, after Scrum Master empowerment, these communities go on to teach each other some different practices that they have seen in some other organizations, and they read some books and they tell each other about the books, share some articles, some new practices, some new trainings and other things. So they actually cultivate each other. They literally they grow each other, these kind of community of practices. So I strongly suggest that the Scrum Masters should be in kind of a, not reports to, but in that community of practice. But maybe there can be a experienced, I don't know, Agile coach or manager for that. Why not?
Great, thank you. So
Yeah.
Do you have suggestions on how Scrum teams should be measured and evaluated?
Measured and evaluated.
Measured.
Like,
So how do we measure the success of a Scrum team? How do we evaluate Scrum teams?
says the customer. If the customer is happy, that's the success point, right? Scrum is not for Scrum. Scrum is for delivering value, continuously delivering value in quality to the customer. So, and also enabling the customer that they can change their requirements, they can expect continuous delivery of some value. So I would say ask the customer for evaluating. If you want to have some survey or whatever, the customer satisfaction, I would say. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and I'm adding here into the chat, there's a lot of information around evidence-based management. So really looking at,
yeah, of course.
How do we measure value? Looking at NPS scores, for example, looking at customer satisfaction, looking at employee satisfaction, looking at both realized and current value and unrealized value, and so on. So there's a bunch of information available that I'll send out to the audience.
Yeah, and lots of kind of indexes, for example. That's a great resource that we can also use. But if you would ask me that, what is the most important that you would ask? I would just ask the customer. That would be the key thing. But of course, the evidence EBMT also has great metrics that we can use in organizations.
Yeah, most definitely. So, oh, I just lost it. Sorry. How do you deal with a Scrum team that doesn't see value in retrospectives? Do you have guidance, some suggestions on how to get them engaged and really seeing the importance? Because if you're not, right, if you're not doing retrospectives, you're not actually getting feedback, you're not improving, you're not inspecting, you're not changing your process and evaluating how you work. Do you have ideas on how to help teams really realize the value of retros?
I lost you, Eric. I lost you. I cannot hear at the moment.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, better.
Okay, so how do you get teams to understand the value and importance of retrospectives?
Most of the time, I use the time box thing, because I ask why, first of all, to the things. Why do you do not want to hold a retrospective? And if this is the case, and most of the time that is the case, because our deadlines, that hard line, which is drawn by blood because you die. That's a deadline, right? Anyway, so this kind of pressure from the management, and also we don't have so much time. Let's skip the retrospectives. Most of the time, that is the cause. And I would go in these cases. Okay, guys, this is time box, right? So what does time box mean? Let's remember. Let's go to the cafeteria and have some coffee and talk about how the sprint went and how can we improve. So it can be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever, just some kind of a free meeting. I use that thing first of all, instead of just pressing them. No, Scrum tells us that we have to do Scrum sprint retrospectives, and we are going to do it, because that never works. It's kind of a pendulum effect. If you push hard, then you will get the response very harder. So instead of doing that, come on, guys, this is in the heart of Scrum, and this is the heart of Kaizen. So becoming better, let's spare some time, and why not we go to Starbucks and have some coffee and talk about, I will get some sticky notes and I can write some things down. That can be a starting point if that's the case, about the time that you're there spending. But if there's some worse problems that they're saying, oh, we do the retrospectives, but there is no improvement. We talk all the time, same things, or people blame each other about those kind of things, about the things that happen in the sprint. Then I try to use my professional coaching skills and facilitation, and it's maybe change the technique that we do the retrospectives. There are a bunch of retrospective techniques that you can use, that you can find online in lots of resources. Maybe I can change our techniques to some more funny retrospectives to have decisions, but at least come up with one result that we can improve. That can be just something very small, but still we try, we experiment something. So I use that thing. We don't have to do it like ages of hours. I mean, like we have the time box, and time boxes we can do shorter, and let's focus on at least one idea. Organizational impediments, organizational problems, for example, in my transformation cases, I also face a lot, and teams say, we talk these a lot of things, but unless the management changes, unless the C-level changes, it will not work, those kinds of things. But let's look at our just small circle, the Scrum team. How can we become better and find one solution or one experiment and try it in the next sprint? That's what I focus on. Most of the time, it's about some convincing and coaching, and I get the result. Okay, let's try another technique and do another. It works.
Great. Thanks, Tolga. So some additional questions keep coming in. Do you have any tricks or any suggestions on how to, if I'm working in, say, a 6-month or a 12-month project that's fixed? So they're saying scope and budget are fixed. Now, if scope's fixed, you're not going to do Scrum because you've already fixed your scope. So you can't evolve your scope. But do you have suggestions on how organizations can start thinking about moving from, say, fixed 12-month scope projects or budget projects to moving to more agile Scrum type projects?
I've seen or heard lots of organizations that, okay, the scope will not change. This is a very fixed scope and that's all we have. It will not change, but they've changed. So first of all, I think we need to remind that why do not we change the scope? You can change the scope instead of not changing. Why don't we change the scope? And if there's something more valuable in the market that you will get more value out of that, why not change to that? And first, I try to convince the people, the business guys, about changing the scope. But still, they say, okay, this is some kind of a regulation thing, or I don't know, some governmental thing. In finance and banking, insurance, we have a lot. Also in telco. So this is some kind of a regulatory thing, and this is all the scope that we need to do. It's very clear. It's not a complex environment, and so we can do waterfall, right? They ask. I would say yes, you can. If the technology is not also changing, but why would you? Also, I would ask. I mean, you can still deliver it in bunches of iterations in increments, and it's always collecting the increments together. And you want to deliver something to first of all some internal customers, maybe only first the employees or whatever. You can always have tested and working software. Why try it like in the last 3 months and have some kind of problems? Because it does not guarantee that in the last 3 months that it will work. So go always test it and integrated increments, even if the requirements won't change, even if the technology won't change. Be safe, be on the safe side. Why risk your results in the 6 months or 12 months? Yeah, that's what I would try to convince people.
Great. There are a whole bunch of questions that are similar here, Tolga, around Scrum outside of software. Have you, I know I have lots of experience using Scrum in other areas like marketing. I've worked with hardware companies. Toyota's using Scrum to build cars, for example. Do you have any examples that you can provide around using Scrum outside of software?
Yeah, actually, we have lots of experience in Turkey, in Istanbul, about this, and is spreading out in Turkey as well. Like in the business agility thing, we could say. And one of the first time we have done this is actually in a telco company, and it was a corporate sales department. I mean, it's got nothing to do with IT or software development. They're just salespeople, and they were trying to sell the GSM lines, right? So they're selling to the corporates. Okay, use our one, and we've done it like weekly sprints. They were doing all the planning, and they were doing their dead scrums in the morning, and they were jumping to their cars and going all around Istanbul and trying to connect with corporations and convince them. Typical sales things actually, but at the end of the week, they were having their reviews, and their increment was money, literally value. I mean, to the company, or just the signed sales contracts. So the increment was literally value. So we did it in sales. We did it in, actually we still coaching and consulting Vodafone Turkey, and it's also in the global now, Vodafone global, like we are supporting in Middle East and also England and Germany. And in Turkey, it started like 4 or 5 years ago, and we are still supporting them. And it started with IT, actually 25 to 30 Scrum teams we have there now. And also we have like 23 digital sales, digital marketing, and digital CRM teams. So digital channels like mobile, and like we have the web pages, you have the websites, but you have marketing there. The digital marketing and digital sales, there are like cross-functional people that are not IT guys. They're not doing any software. They're designing banners. They're designing their experiments on marketing and other things. And yeah, we have business agility teams in Waterfall as well. Where in one bank that we are going together now is we started in HR, and actually that's a very good approach that they have changed the name of HR, human resources, to talent and culture. And we started with HR, the new name, talent and culture, and we have recruitment teams, for example, the recruitment departments. Their thing is recruiting people, so they are having interviews, they are having LinkedIn filters, they are supported by some headhunters, whatever, and it's a recruitment team, and they're actually doing Scrum with Kanban kind of thing. And 17 teams now we have in that bank in all non-IT. And one other thing is banks audits actually are some kind of a very hierarchical most of the time, and lots of regulations depending on the regulatory corporations. And the audit is now doing in this bank, audit is now doing Scrum with 12 Scrum teams. And their increment is, I mean, in the HR, their increment is the people that are recruited, for example. And the training department, the training design, they are designing new trainings in their laboratories and other things with designs and video recordings, online trainings, or even class trainings. And the increment is the training content. In audit, the increment is the validated processes that are in conformance with government rules and other things, blah blah. So yeah, we have quite experiences in non-IT domains. These kind of.
Great. So let's see here. I think we probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Here's a common one that comes up quite a bit. Can somebody be both a product owner and a Scrum Master?
Yeah, they can, but why they should? Okay, Scrum does not tell us that no, product owner cannot be Scrum Master. But actually, in this very class that I've been here today, I had this question. I get this a lot. I don't suggest that product owners, Scrum Master, the same person, because it's a conflict of interest. Product owner is also always, most of the time, demanding people and a demanding person, and Scrum Master is sometimes like how could say, I like that metaphor actually, like a sheepdog that protects the team sometimes and barks sometimes. But so it's like like a protector of the team sometimes also barks to the product owner or coaches the product owner. If it's the same person, the two hats is the same person. It's like a schizophrenic thing. And but can it be? Yeah. But why would you do that? Instead of having that product owner focusing on the value, on the market conditions, on the stakeholders' needs, and on the competitors' advances and other things, and having a Scrum Master focusing on the Scrum itself, on the team's effectiveness or productivity, and creating transparency and Scrum's working well. Why would you have the same person? I would not suggest, but yeah, you can. If I mean, there is no if the reason is okay, we don't have so much money, so we cannot invest on a Scrum Master. We could call the product owner also a Scrum Master. Really, that will not help the Scrum adoption in your organization. Have a separate someone, at least from development team, for example, as a Scrum Master, which is actually not the case that I suggest, but at least do that. Do not put the two hats on the same person.
Great. So with that, I want to make sure I'm conscious of folks' time. I think we can do one more question here.
By the way, and I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think Stephanie has the great post about it, great blog post about having the product owner, Scrum Master, the same person. Very recent blog post, I guess, Stephanie Okerma.
Yes, she does. I'll grab that while you take the next question and put that in the chat.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
There are a bunch of questions out there that I've seen around kind of part-time members of a Scrum team. Do you feel that everybody on the Scrum team needs to be dedicated 100% full-time?
I didn't get the beginning of the question, Eric. Can you come again, please?
Sure. Do you feel that everybody has to be dedicated 100% full-time to the Scrum team, or can people be part-time on, say, multiple Scrum teams, or part-time on the Scrum team?
I don't suggest that, but yeah, I can. If the question is, can we have like partially allocated team members? Yes, you can. But I would call it a problem. I would call a focus problem. One of the Scrum values is focus. And so this guy will have a daily Scrum in the morning, let's say 9 a.m. and 9:15 going to other team and having another daily Scrum. He or she would have a sprint goal in team A and having another sprint goal in team B. And I face it sometimes. We have like, okay, my 30% is in this team, my 40% is in this team, and my other 30% is in this team. So I'm in 3 teams. It's like cutting the people with a saw and having like a left arm and the left leg into a team and the body on another team, the right part on another team. So having 2-3 goals or partially being allocated into the Scrum teams is so. If you have in an emergent case and choose A, B, or C, what would you do? So it conflicts with our value of focus, but can you do that? Yeah, but for example, database admins, some UI guys or UX guys, I suggest to the teams, depending on if the Scrum team, the development team, the Scrum team can solve their problems like 70%, 80%, and needs the 20% dependency on a DBA, database admin, or a UX guy. Okay, keep that guy outside of the team, but have your dependencies sorted out with some refinement in your backlog, and align your time span to have them also align with your sprints, but keep them outside of the team instead of putting one UX guy to like 3 teams or 4 teams. So this can be an option, but yeah, also it can be partially allocated.
Great. So with that, thank you, Tolga, for the time. Lindsay, if we can go to the next slide. Just to help you continue your learning and make this one of many things that you're doing, hopefully. We have a lot of free resources available on our website, including learning paths. So we have learning paths for Scrum Masters, for product owners, for development team members, as well as for your Agile leadership teams, filled with different resources, blogs, articles, webinars, videos,
Yeah.
and more to help people keep learning. So please visit that information. Keep your learning going. Don't just stop here. Don't just stop with a class. Next slide. So with that, I want to thank you, Tolga, for your time today. Thank you, audience, for your time. I know we didn't get to all of the questions, but we'll try our best to respond to them via email as well. And keep following Scrum.org and Scrum on. Thank you.
Thank you all. And it was nice to have very nice questions, and I hope I could help a little bit. So yeah, Scrum on.
Thanks, Tolga.